The first thing we want to talk about is actually the objectives for this. And if you'll look, you'll see it says becoming aware of the legal implications for confidentiality. So as we know that there are rights that students have, parents have, um, concerning confidentiality, no matter who you are or what role you play in the school system. The next objective is we want to develop some skills that in case a parent or someone comes up to you and asks you certain questions and you really don't need to be answering those, how to answer those and how to respond back to them without hurting their feelings. So we want to go over those objectives with you all. So the first thing we ask ourselves is, what is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act? And we know that as FERPA. FERPA has a lot of different things in it, and it not only deals with your educational records, but it deals with different aspects to student privacy. So we have to make sure that we are on board and that we are making sure in every way that we are showing these students privacy. If we do not do that, you may end up in court. You do not want to end up in court because number one, it's an embarrassment. The next thing is you don't want your school district to have to terminate you because of privacy. And I'm going to be honest about it. Sometimes it's easy to let something slip. I mean, and we all know that. So we have to be on guard when we are uh, being talked to and asked questions. You have to make sure that you just address that and say you may need to talk to the teacher, you may need to talk to the administrator in that aspect. That way it gets you out off of the path of that question. All right, so what I want to show you is we have a little short, it's a little bit less than 5 minutes, a little video here that talks about FERPA. And I will continue saying FERPA, but as you know, it's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act.
The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, is a federal law which applies to educational institutions and agencies, such as schools, school districts, colleges, and universities, to which funds have been available under any program administered by the Secretary of Education. The purpose of FERPA is to protect the privacy of parents and students with regard to education records under Section 444 of the General Education Provisions Act as amended. Wow, it's easy to get confused with all that legal language. Let's try that again in plain English. The truth is, data about us is everywhere. It's collected when we shop, take a vacation, look at a web page, or send an email. You see, FERPA is a federal law that applies to most schools, colleges, and universities. It's meant to protect all that identifiable information about students in records that are kept by schools, and it provides the right for you to access that information, to seek to correct it, and generally to consent to its disclosure. Let's take a closer look at what that means. Today is Patrick's first day of kindergarten. As Patrick moves through the education system, his schools accumulate data, such as his grades, learning disabilities, or special needs information, and disciplinary information. As Patrick takes tests to see how he's progressing, his scores are protected by FERPA. FERPA requires schools and state and local educational agencies to keep the information that came from Patrick's records private and get his parents' written consent before sharing it with anyone else. There are some exceptions, but the general rule is Patrick's records are confidential. Students don't attend school anonymously, so schools routinely share some basic information about students called directory information. If a school is going to share directory information, it must notify parents and students who are 18 or over, or who attend post-secondary institutions. For example, Patrick's school yearbook contains his name, grade level, and photograph. That's okay because his school designated these items as directory information and published its policy on its website, and Patrick's parents haven't opted out. FERPA also requires schools provide Patrick's parents the ability to review his records to make sure they are accurate. Patrick's applying to college. He and his parents review his high school transcript and discover the school has gotten Patrick confused with another student who has lower grades. This isn't good. FERPA not only gives his parents the right to see the records, but also to request that the school correct mistakes. If Patrick's parents and the school disagree on the accuracy of the info, FERPA gives Patrick's parents the right to request a hearing. Colleges and universities are also required to protect student information under FERPA, but the rules change a bit. Meet Lisa, a high school graduate who is headed off to college. Hooray! While Lisa was in elementary, middle, and high school and under the age of 18, FERPA allowed her parents access to her education records. Now, Lisa is entering college, and her FERPA rights transfer from her parents to her. Her parents wonder, but wait a minute, I'm paying bills here, and now how she's doing academically? Since Lisa's parents claim her as a dependent on their federal tax return, her parents can still see her education records if Lisa's college chooses to release them. FERPA doesn't require schools to release records, it only allows this. You may be wondering, how do I find out more about how FERPA affects me or my child? To start, look for your school or school district's FERPA policy on its website, or ask your principal or school administrative staff about your rights under FERPA. Visit the Department of Education's Family Policy Compliance Office website for answers to frequently asked questions on privacy, training, and guidance for parents and students on FERPA rights and protections.
So as you saw in this little short video, and it tells us that we actually need parent permission. And if a student is 18 or older, if they are emancipated, then they can sign for their records or whatever they need to be seen. So we just need to make sure that we're doing it right. Like it says here, the vital information, we need to make sure, we need to make certain that we get these releases, and not verbal, we have to have it written. Because if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And they could take you to court. And even though you say that they gave you verbal permission, that's not going to cut it, because it says that you have to have written permission. So let's just make sure that we have the written permission. Now, there are a few exceptions. And as you can see here, that school employee records is one of those pieces that is an exception, as well as teacher's personal notes. If it's a teacher's personal notes, we don't have to give those out. That is for the teacher's record only, and we have to abide by the law. And if there's issues, then we have to give those to the law enforcement. Here you're going to see, like I said, the student's name, those types of things that will be on that the student record. So you have, and they discussed it in this little video, short video, about the personal directory information. In that, you have the student's name, and you have a few other pieces of information that is okay. But when it comes down to giving out, like the student's disability, their address, their phone number, those types of things, that's something that we're not allowed to do. We don't need to give out that kind of information unless we have that permission, as I said, written down. Now, sometimes we have some children that have some discipline issues, and we do some observations. And then we also have Infinite Campus that keeps up with their discipline. Now, here is a place that we need to take a close look at, because some of you all probably have students in your classroom that you oversee that may have discipline problems. So if a child acts out in one class that you're in, and you go into another class, don't go in there and talk about what happened to that student in the previous class, because that has no concern in any other classes, just in the class that it happened in. So we don't want, the reason for that is we don't want the gossip to continue on and on and on. Finally, and eventually, it will get to the parent that the whole world knows about it, and we don't want that. We want to keep everybody in line and make sure that doesn't happen. So, and if another teacher has Infinite Campus, they can always go in there to the discipline records, and they can see those types of things. But I don't know, we don't have access to Infinite Campus at KVAC, but I'm thinking that they're actually taking away that discipline record out of the Infinite Campus because there was issues with that um, concerning people getting to see that didn't have the child in class. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is we have had court cases because of confidentiality. Confidentiality is an area that we need to talk about to not only the paraeducators, but also to the teachers and administrators, because it is getting out of hand, as she said. So we just need to watch what we say, who we say it to, and not violate the Students' Privacy Act. Now, sometimes we have attendance records. I'm going to tell you a situation that I wasn't involved in, but I knew all about this. A sixth grader, they have a field trip for those uh, that don't miss uh, more than 2 days. A parent came in and asked, and the instructional assistant was at the office. So they directed the question to the instructional assistant. They come in because they wanted to know why this child that was not their child got to go on a field trip and their child did not, because they knew that the child missed more than 2 days. And when asked, the instructional assistant actually led the person to the school clerk, and then it went on to the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor found out that the information that was given out by a paraeducator. So that's something that we don't need to get involved, because number one, that parent should not know about the other child, about attendance or whatever. The child could have been excused for some reason. Um, so we just need to watch what we say and what we do. And if it doesn't involve somebody, that person's child, we probably shouldn't be talking about it. And I had a rule of thumb as a director that only the teachers and the administration was allowed to talk to parents. And that the reason for that was to keep down court cases, because you can get sued in an instant. And when you get sued, of course, you're going to lose your job if you're guilty of saying things that you don't need to be saying. So, that's just one thing that we want to look at and make sure that we don't do that. It's easy done. It's easy done. Now, we have two different types of records. Sometimes you write them down, and sometimes you do them electronic. Now, being an instructional assistant, you have a lot of things that you might want to write down about a student. And it's just to keep a log. They may be on medication and you're trying to uh, check to see if the child, because this is what the doctor says, monitor the child, write down the observations of the child, see if the child may need, the child may need more medicine, they may need less. If they're falling asleep in class, they sure don't need more, they'll need less. So you're keeping a log of that. Well, instead of you giving the information to the parent or to take back to the doctor, you're going to give that information to the teacher, who will then respond that your information back to the parent, and that way it'll clear you. You're out of the picture, and the teacher will be giving that information to the parent. So we just want to make sure that we do everything correctly. And electronic, sometimes we're always going around with these laptops, and we're just typing in things. That way it's easier. We don't have the paper copies laying on the tables or whatever so people can see. We're typing it in, and that's a good thing. Nothing bad about that. So we just need to make sure that when we're typing this stuff electronic, that nobody else has access to this, and that you're not leaving your laptop open with this particular stuff showing, because nobody needs to see that. We just have to be cautious. Now, when we're going down to your educational data collection and observations, as you can see, the middle one there says be cautious, and it's there for a reason. We have to make sure that we are cautious and that we do not get caught up in having to go to court. Uh, the first bullet there says assume all types of information about a child, handwritten and or electronic, will be seen and subject to subpoena. So when you're writing something down, you want to make sure that you're not writing something down that you want the whole world to know about. You just want to write bulleted items, and not just keep on going about whatever the instance is. The last bullet there says access administrative support before releasing any part of the student's records, written or oral. Again, I would be cautious to even give information to a parent. I would make sure that the teacher did that or the administration did that. You can talk to parents, and that's good, and have a relationship with the parents. But other than that, you don't need to be giving out any other kind of information. And the reason for that is it'll come back to the teacher, and the teacher will say, well, I heard this, and you don't want that to happen. Let the teacher do it. Let them correspond with the teacher, and you can still have a relationship with the parents. I know some paraeducators, they take care of maybe a particular child, and the parent is contacting them at night, those types of things. I'm aware of that. I've seen that, heard that, know all about that. So we just need to watch what we say, because you don't know if you're ever going to be recorded. The parent may be recording you, the guardian might be recording you. So just be certain that we are doing what we need to be doing, and staying out of trouble. So what I have now is a little practice here. I've got a handout, and it's got 3 scenarios on there. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at the very first one. And it says, you are in a grocery store when you see a teacher with whom you work. The two of you did not have time to discuss the lesson that you supported with a student. You know the teacher will work with this student before you see her the next day. You very quietly begin to discuss the lesson with the teacher. Is this a violation of confidentiality? So what I want to say here is this is a violation of confidentiality. And the reason being is that it is discussed in a public place. So if you are in any public place, you don't need to be talking about anything confidential. There could be someone over in the next aisle that has really good ears and can hear what you're saying, and they can go off and talk um, about it. So make sure that you don't discuss anything in a public place. The main place that you need to discuss anything is at school, and no other place. Now, if you all want to discuss something about, because you're co-teaching or something of that nature, and you have a certain thing you want to talk about for a child to try to modify or do something of that nature, you can pick up the phone and talk to your teacher, because you might be the one that's working with this child. You might be the one that's giving the accommodations. You might be doing those types of things, and you two can talk about that. And hopefully nobody will be listening on the other end in your rooms or whatever, because you need to make it confidential. You don't want your husbands to hear it, even though they're not going to go out and tell it. But everything has to be confidential about what we do with these students. Now, the next one says you see a friend at a basketball game. This friend is also the parent of a student in the general education classroom to which you are assigned to support a student with disability. The friend knows this and begins to ask questions about the classroom structure. Is this a violation of confidentiality? This is a violation of confidentiality. The conversation is not appropriate to have um, in your job as a paraprofessional. That's something that the teacher must address, the structure in the classroom, even though it didn't have anything to do with this special needs child. But anyway, just refer the person back to the teacher and let them talk about the structure in the class. Okay, so the scenario 3, the student with whom you are working tells you that they do not understand the lesson. You explain the lesson again using the written organizer to help gather their thoughts. You give the student an appropriate accommodation that's in their IEP that's related to the written assignment. Is this a violation of confidentiality to discuss this with the teacher or proper documentation? Yes, it's not violating confidentiality. Um, in the classroom, the teacher normally gives, and it not normally does, give the assignment and also monitors the child with the use of whatever accommodations it's written in their IEP. Uh, so the conversation is appropriate because you are working with this student and you need to know the accommodations that the child needs for that writing assignment. For a rule of thumb, best practice, if you're approached for confidential information, refer the person back to the teacher, back to the principal, back to the guidance counselor, administrative staff, and that way you will not have to say anything that may be out of the ordinary. Because, like I said, sometimes it just sort of comes out uh, because you think that you're answering a question. So, and you're not thinking that it's confidential, but most of the time it could be. So we want to make sure of that. Uh, a good saying here, it says, remember, when in doubt, don't give out. Treat confidential information as though your job depends on it, because it does. Remember, as I said previously, if it does go to court and you're in violation, your job will more than likely be terminated, and we don't want that. We need you paraprofessionals. You all help the teachers. You all help the students. You all help the school. Um, you support the school. You support the student. You support the teacher. So you play a vital role in our schools, and we really appreciate you. So we just need to make sure that we just put all of those um, questions back to either the teacher or to the administrative staff. We do have policies and procedures that are in your school district that you can read about those if you want to do that, or you can also go on the website and you can actually go to the federal regulations and read upon that. So there's all different types of resources that you can go to read to make sure that you are doing what you need to be doing. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or Denny Paul May. He is our due process consultant as well. And the email is on, if you scroll on down, it is on here. And we will be glad to answer your questions. Give us an email. Remember, mine is Brenda.Combs2. I do have the number 2 after mine, so just make sure that you send it there to 2. If not, I won't get it. Or you can send it to Denny May as well. I appreciate you all being on the session, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.